Many people know about Auschwitz, the Nazi death camp in southwest Poland. At Auschwitz between 1942 and early 1945, over 1 million people were killed in a camp and system set up with one purpose: to kill as many people as possible in the shortest time. But unfortunately, there were many more camps and types of camps that the Nazis built and used during World War II. The first camp established by the Nazis was Dachau. Located just north of the Bavarian city of Munich, Dachau was established on March 10, 1933, less than 2 months after Hitler came to power. The main building at Dachau was an abandoned munitions factory. As inmates were sent in, they built the buildings that visitors see as the memorial today. The first victims of Dachau were political. Thousands of social democrats, communists, and others were sent there within months of the camp going up. In the first year, about 5,000 prisoners were held at the camp. Many of the first victims were released, and as a condition of their release, they were not to mention what they saw and experienced at the camp, which was raw brutality. The first commander of Dachau was Theodor Eicke, a longtime Nazi and well-known sadist. His coarse behavior and language made him sort of an outcast within the SS, but he was perfect for the job of camp commandant. He was cruel, unforgiving, and seemingly without mercy. Eicke urged his men to act with inflexible harshness. He was also the first to use the infamous term Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free, which was emblazoned on the gate of the camp and became the motto of the entire system. Eicke and his staff developed the system which would govern most of the camps, of all kinds, that the Nazis would build. An important thing to remember about the places called concentration camps and work camps: hundreds of thousands of people died or were killed there. They weren't just prisons. It's estimated that at least 32,000 people died in Dachau during its existence. However, tens of thousands more were sent to Auschwitz after 1942, and a great many died at the more than 150 Dachau subcamps scattered throughout southern Germany and Austria. Dachau was also the scene of some of the more brutal and well-known experiments carried out by the Nazis. These included putting victims in ice-cold water until they died, placing them in excruciating low-pressure chambers, and injections with various diseases and substances, all in the name of science, much of it done for the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. In the first years of the Nazi regime, most women prisoners were held in the women's prisons of Germany. But as the flood of inmates increased and the camp system perfected, camps for women were built. There were a number of camps for women, most of them subcamps of larger installations, but two in particular stand out both for their size and their cruelty: the women's section at Auschwitz and the Ravensbrück concentration camp, about 50 miles north of Berlin. Ravensbrück was also the place where many of the SS Women's Auxiliary Guards, or Aufseherinnen, received their training. Many of these women went on to command other smaller subcamps, be in charge of the women's camp at Auschwitz, and become some of the cruelest guards in Holocaust history. They gained their stripes at Ravensbrück. Beatings, lashings, and many other kind of cruel punishments were inflicted on the women's prisoners at Ravensbrück and other camps by other women. Things were always bad at Ravensbrück. By 1943, it was a true horror show. Disease and hunger, along with the cruelty of the guards, made Ravensbrück infamous. By late winter 1945, the camp had become grossly overcrowded due to the lack of transport caused by the war, and the emptying out of other camps further in the east, like Auschwitz. Other concentration camps included Bergen-Belsen and Buchenwald, two camps which were overrun by the Western Allies at the end of the war before prisoners within them could be killed or marched out. Though other camps were found and horrified those who saw them, Bergen-Belsen and Buchenwald in particular shocked the world with their cruelty, filth, starvation, disease, and stacks of dead bodies. Much, but not all, of the documentary footage of the camps after liberation comes from these camps. The two most well-known Arbeitslager were Mauthausen and Dora. Mauthausen was officially a subcamp of the Dachau camp system and is located halfway between Vienna and Salzburg, and not that far from Linz, Austria, where Hitler grew up. Though Mauthausen was officially part of the Dachau system, it essentially ran on its own. Mauthausen was a work camp, yes, but it was also a punishment camp. Many of the men sent there were prisoners the Nazis particularly disliked or wanted to make an example of to other prisoners. Mauthausen was a work camp, but work there most often meant death. The most infamous part of the camp was the quarry, where prisoners broke and hauled rocks to be used in construction of one kind or another. Sometimes the rocks had no purpose at all. They were simply there to be carried until the prisoner died. This happened on the Stairway of Death, where prisoners carrying blocks of stone on crude barriers on their backs were made to climb a very steep 186 steps of uneven and wet granite. Today, the steps have been evened out and are usually dry, but during the war, the Stairway of Death claimed thousands of lives. Many of the prisoners were starving, sick, or suffering from wounds inflicted by guards or by the work itself. Many reaching the top would be sent back down to walk the stairs again, and again, and again. The blocks of stones carried by victims would often fall down the hill, tumbling through the rows of prisoners, killing some and injuring many. Many of the injured would later perish as a result. Other inmates making it to the top might be taken off to a nearby cliff, cruelly called the parachutist's wall by the guards. At the cliff, inmates might be pushed off to their deaths below or given the choice between life and death. To earn life, perhaps only for hours or days, a victim had to push another off of the wall to his death. Quite a number of men jumped from the cliffs, their last act of personal will, rather than push another prisoner off or suffer through another backbreaking day. At times, guards would push large rocks off the cliffs around the quarry or force inmates to do so, directly onto men working below. Oftentimes, the guards would make a game of it and bet whether or not a rock would hit or kill someone below. Though Mauthausen was a work camp, at least 95,000 people died there. Dora is the short name for the Mittelbau Dora camp, which you will sometimes hear called Dora Mittelbau. Dora is located in the southern Harz Mountains in central Germany and was originally part of the Buchenwald camp system when it started in the summer of 1943. Prisoners from Buchenwald were sent to build a large industrial complex in the deep forest and man-made caves and tunnels of the area. For the central focus of the work at Mittelbau Dora was the top-secret V program, which built the revolutionary V1 and V2 rockets, as well as lesser-known prototypes. At its height in 1944, Dora held about 60,000 people, which included men, women, and a number of children. Most of those brought to Dora never left. The information they held was too important. Until the US Army liberated the camp and its subcamps in April 1945, the only way out of Dora was to die. 20,000 people died at Dora, 1/3 of those sent there. Hundreds of thousands of victims died in the concentration and work camps, but the sole or main purpose of those camps was not to kill, though death was expected in most cases. There were only 6 extermination camps, and it was these camps that claimed most of the lives taken by the Nazis during the Holocaust. The camps were, in order of operation, Chełmno, Majdanek, Belzec, Treblinka, Sobibor, and Auschwitz-Birkenau, all in Poland. Though most people simply call the extermination camp Auschwitz, the Auschwitz camp system included 3 main camps: Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II Birkenau, sometimes known as just Birkenau, and Auschwitz III Monowitz, an industrial complex to the east of the other 2 camps. It was at Auschwitz-Birkenau that the infamous gas chambers and crematoria were built. Before and during the establishment of the Vernichtungslager, over 1 million people, mostly Jews, were killed by the Nazi Einsatzgruppen, or special action groups. Many of these killings were quite public. Many people watched it happen. Some German soldiers took pictures, despite orders against it. Not only did SS Chief Heinrich Himmler want to hide the killings as much as possible, he also recognized that the killing of so many people was taking a psychological toll on his men, never mind the victims or witnesses. In fall 1941, he ordered construction to begin on camps whose main function was killing, though both Auschwitz and Majdanek had a number of work camps and sub-camps around them. Among the extermination camps, the most deadly in terms of the numbers of people killed in the shortest amount of time was Treblinka. Over 900,000 men, women, and children were killed at Treblinka, most of them soon after they arrived. Treblinka was operational only until October 1943, when it was closed and those destined for it sent to Birkenau. At Belzec, Chełmno, Treblinka, and Sobibor, carbon monoxide gas from truck or tank engines was used to kill. At Auschwitz and the smaller Majdanek camp, the infamous Zyklon B gas was used in specially made gas chambers, which at Majdanek were left relatively intact when the Germans fled in the summer of 1944. As you may know, and should if you do not, over 6 million European Jews and an approximate 2 to 4 million others were killed during the Holocaust, many, if not most of them, in the camps. We hope you enjoyed our video. Please leave a comment down below about your thoughts, and don't forget to like it. Subscribe to the channel as an offering to the gods of the algorithm, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.